Good evening. My name is Arlene Miller, and it's my privilege to welcome you to this edition of Our Town. As we're recording this session, it is 1 week before the annual town Longmeadow elections, which are to be held on June 13th. It's a Tuesday. And the reason we're doing this group of interviews is because there is a very special and important race in the school committee, and we want to highlight those candidates during this session. But let's back up one step. June 13th is the annual town election. That's when we elect our officials. There's a select board person running, there's a planning board person running. There are 4 people running for 3 seats on the school committee, and we'll talk about that in detail. And then there's a question about do you support the building of a new DPW facility? So there's a lot to think about, important decisions to be made. And we're doing this taping so that you, as our voters, can be better informed. I'm very happy to have with me one of the candidates for the school committee. His name is Tom Mennella. Mennella, like vanilla, but Mennella.
You got it, exactly.
Okay, great. And
brings back memories of being teased on the playground, right?
Oh,
there.
good. I didn't know. No. Tom is one, as I said, one of 4 candidates running for 3 positions. And he's pointed out to me, which I will repeat over and over again, you and I may vote for 3 people for the 3 seats, even though there are 4 candidates. And it's important to exercise your vote. So my goal is to have you and me meet Tom, so you'll have a little bit more information about who to vote for on June 13th. So thank you for running.
Thank you for the invitation to come and speak with you.
Yeah, it's important that our citizens take this, step up to the plate and fill these kinds of seats. So tell me about yourself. What do you do?
Sure. So, well, I'll say the most important thing first, which is that I have 2 young daughters that are in the district. I've got a rising 6th grader, so she's about to graduate from Blueberry Hills School.
Graduation.
Yeah,
oh.
stepping up,
yeah.
And she'll be moving on to Williams. And then I have a daughter 2 years younger who will be going into the 4th grade, also at Blueberry. So when we moved here, my wife and I, we moved here, as many families in the town did, for the schools. And
how long have you been in town?
We've been in town 5 years.
5 years?
This will be
okay.
5 years.
More than 1, that's good.
Absolutely, and if you do the math, you'll see that we came when my daughter was about to enter 1st grade. So we came for the schools. We moved to get into the districts that we wanted our kids into. And so I've been relatively involved at Blueberry and also at the district a little bit to try to give back to the community and to the schools, because we feel like they've done so much for us already, and this seemed like the next logical step. As far as what do I do?
Your day job?
I'm an educator, so I'm a college professor.
Okay.
I've been a college professor for 10 years, last 5 years here in town at Bay Path. And so education runs deep in my blood, and education was a priority for us as a family. My wife is also a college professor, so.
And where does she teach?
Also at Bay Path.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We're both in the sciences, so we're one of those families that around the dinner table we're talking math, science, and education.
Oh, great. So what do you specifically teach?
I'm a life scientist. I'm a molecular geneticist by training.
Ooh.
And so
how fun.
I teach a number of the more molecular biology and genetic undergrad courses, and I'm also the director of a graduate program.
Oh, terrific. Wow, great. So what do you think of Longmeadow, and how does the school committee and the school, how do you see your role on the school committee vis-a-vis the town?
Sure. Well, as a town, you can't beat it. I tell people that haven't seen the town that I feel like I entered a time warp, and I'm in the 1950s. Kids riding their bikes to school, kids walking to school. And as a parent of young kids who do that as well, knowing that other parents are keeping their eye on your kids as they're commuting to wherever they're going. So even when I came here for my interview, I couldn't believe I was seeing kids riding their bikes to school. I didn't think that happened anywhere anymore.
And we even make the sidewalks down so you can get don't have to pick up over the curb.
Exactly. Right. Wonderful crossing guards everywhere. So I think as a town, it was said recently at a town meeting by one of the select board members that education is our brand here in Longmeadow. It's our town identity, and I think that's true.
And the trees.
And the trees and the green.
And the sidewalks.
But I agree with that completely. I think that the town values the education that kids get here, and I think that our identity as a town really lies within the schools.
Well, you've only been here 5 years, so maybe I don't know if you've felt some of the there sometimes can be tension between the school committee and the select board vis-a-vis budget preparations.
Absolutely.
And I don't know if you've been involved with the budget in this last round or any other rounds.
I've spoken at town hall meetings about the budget.
About the budget. So how do you see the demands, the desires of the school fitting into the big picture of the demands and the desires of the town?
Sure.
In terms of that, and how would you present yourself in that arena?
Absolutely. I think that the school committee as an entity and the individual members of the school committee individually are there to represent the schools and the children that are getting those educations. That's what they're there for.
The 33% of the community, whatever they are.
Exactly. That being said, education here gets a very large percentage of the town budget, and I think that it's the responsibility of the district and the school committee to be as careful with those dollars as possible. So I like it when the school committee advocates strongly for educational programs, for improvements, and for students and the education they get. But once those dollars are given, I think that the district has to be as careful with that money as possible, and explore whatever more fiscally prudent options might be available to get the same return. So
my experience with that scenario is right now we have a strong town manager form of government. Town meeting, town manager form of government, and the town manager's budget is the one that goes to the town meeting. You know this. He sort of says, the school committee, this is your pot. Police department, this is your pot. DPW, this is your pot. You know, can try to work within that. So. How do you feel about that?
I would, at least in the experience I've had informally on the sidelines, I believe it's slightly different than that. There are, I believe, early conversations of this is what we think we can give. Can you make that work? Do you need more? What do you need more for? Okay, this is good. And there's dialogue between the district and the town in that way. It's almost like a pre-negotiation, so they can get closer to where they need to be. Right. The term that's bandied around a lot is a level service budget, which is what money do you need to keep doing what you're doing now. That's a good place to start. Sometimes improvements are needed. But I will say that, at least in my brief time here, in those cases where the district required additional funds for academic technology improvements. Full-time kindergarten. For full-time kindergarten, that money was there. It was provided as a separate parcel of finances. Well, which goes on as the budgets grow from year to year. Yeah. So there is tension, of course, because every entity wants more, and I think that's their responsibility to want more. You can easily provide better education with more dollars, but the town has other responsibilities as well, so I see their side as well. I think the school committee's job is to advocate for what they know they need to deliver the education that we know our kids deserve. And then to do that in a responsible and diplomatic way with the town. Recognizing we need a police department, we need a fire department, we need DPW. And we have residents that aren't necessarily benefiting from the schools. Right, 66% of the residents. Well, that's depending on how you look at it. But again, I'll go back to that idea of a brand. I will argue that those residents, even that 66%, still benefit from very strong education here, because the value. Exactly, the value of their homes has that value, not so much for the building itself, but for the town that it's in. And those homes sell so quickly on the market because young families are dying to get into Long Meadow. So everyone benefits from a strong education, a strong district here. So tell me, is there any, we have a school committee now, you have a new superintendent, who I understand is doing fine. Oh yeah. He's a product of our, he's doing a great job. So anything you would change in the school committee? What would be your focus if you came into the school committee? Some people focus on one particular aspect of that job. Do you have something in mind that's bothering you that you want to change? Not bothering me. My first job as a new member of the school committee will be to sit back, watch, and listen, and get a feel for the dynamics and what the existing priorities are. My personal passion and area of expertise, aside from the life sciences and molecular genetics, I want to take that class, is academic technology. So which we have quite a bit of, or am I missing something? No, we do. We do. At Bay Path, I'm very involved in educational technology there. I've published speaking about the ways that educational technology can be leveraged for better education at the higher education level. And actually right now, I'm a parent representative on Long Meadow Public Schools Academic Technology Committee. So you're right, we're doing very well with academic.
Didn't we just give you a couple $100,000 at the town meeting for
upgrades and preventative maintenance and service contracts.
For computers?
For computers and educational technology in general. A lot goes into
Was that good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
I mean, is that what you wanted?
Much needed, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. It's what the district needed to continue to provide that type of education that they've been providing. So it's not that I would change anything as much as I would try to look to the future. About
more or different?
Probably different.
Okay.
And I'll give you an example. About 5 years ago, maybe a little bit more, iPads were all the rage in education.
Yes.
Every district was talking about getting them. Every student was going to have them.
Yes.
One-to-one programs was the buzzword, where every student gets an iPad. And that's kind of burned out now. That's kind of fizzled out because of the cost, but also because a lot of students weren't really getting the educational gains, especially at the younger grades, having their own iPad that they couldn't get from an iPad cart that could service many different classes on a rotating schedule. And now Chromebooks are kind of coming up as more the rage.
Difference is?
Imagine a laptop that can work like a laptop as long as it has a Wi-Fi connection, that's a Chromebook, versus an iPad tablet that's almost like a small mobile computer that can do so much.
Okay.
The other difference is that Chromebooks run as cheap as $180, and iPads are a whole lot more expensive.
So you're going to save us money by making this?
Well, I might not be doing that. But I think that given changes in the educational technology landscape, you can deliver the same return or maybe even a better return at a smaller financial hit, as long as you have your eye on those trends and those directions.
So
and I hope to be able to contribute that.
So this 200, I'm guessing the number, I'm about right. It was about 200,000 that we gave at the town meeting?
My recollection is around that as well. Yeah.
Is that, do you guys have a plan for that, or is this just we're still talking about it?
No, it was the plan ahead of time. So there was a budget that was needed in order to address what had to be done.
Okay, but that doesn't include what you're talking about.
Right.
So that's in addition to that.
Well, as things phase out. So like all technology, things become obsolete sometimes before you get it out of the box.
Give me an idea what you're talking about, future. When do you?
I don't know the particulars of the iPad contracts, but all of the iPads that are in the schools right now, all of the technology that's in the schools are under service contracts, where they'll be upgraded and repaired and maintained by the vendor on an as-needed basis. There reaches a point in any electronic device's life where the cost of that contract doesn't make sense given the obsolescence of the device. Right. And that's usually a turnover window where districts will begin. Oh, and
so
even
maybe a couple of years, or 2 or 3, maybe?
Again, I don't know what's left on those contracts, but that would probably set the timeline. Okay. And so what most districts do is what they call a refresh or a turnover. So if we're an iPad institution, let's say a college or a university is an iPad institution, we've hit that window of obsolescence, now we buy new ones. When that cycle comes, it makes a lot of sense to go in a cheaper direction. If you have to buy new things anyway, it makes sense to buy cheaper things.
Taxpayer, I like that word a little bit.
If you can get the same return in the classroom.
So let's talk about the future a little bit. The big deal on the school committee agenda item is the middle schools.
That's right. That's the biggest thing.
Do you have a feel for where are you on that? How much?
Sure.
Do you know much about it?
I know what the average resident knows.
Okay, which is maybe what I know, or maybe less. Go ahead.
Which is that the existing schools are in disrepair, and they need upgrading, they need repair, they need to be brought up to code. And what I have read in articles from the district is that the cost of those repairs to bring those buildings to where they need to be could very well be greater than the cost to build a new structure. If that's true, then I defer to my kind of general philosophy, which is that we have to deliver the best product for the students at the best cost to the taxpayer. We have to find that balance. Yeah. If, though, it turns out that with more research that we can get the existing structures to where they need to be to provide a safe and clean environment for our students to learn in.
We haven't done much to upgrade them at all.
That's right, a lot of deferred maintenance.
A lot of deferred maintenance, yeah.
And so if we can do that with what we have already and have it hit the pocketbook a little bit less, then perhaps that's the direction we should go in.
What about the one school, two school? Are you
Again,
part of that conversation already or not?
Not officially, no,
Yeah.
but I have my own opinions.
Yes.
So Glenbrook was built at a time where an open classroom structure was all the rage, and from what I hear, again, unofficially, that's more of a hindrance to them right now than it is a benefit. And
even though it's a younger school.
Even though it's a younger school, right? Again, this idea of trends, right? These trends that you follow, like iPads, like open classroom structure. And, you know, again, with somebody with little kids, this is an issue that's personal to me, and I have to admit, I'm a little disgusted that we even have to talk about it this way. But an open classroom structure is a safety concern at this point, where no one ever thought that would be an issue in the past.
Right. Well, you know what? The allure of that lasted very shortly, even with Glenbrook. I can remember them thinking, we've got to divide this up.
Yeah, right. That's what I heard.
I mean, it was you know, oh, it was the rage, and then quickly that went out the door.
Right, bookcases.
It was like math. Every other year it was a new math.
Right.
Okay.
But math you can change on the fly. Buildings are much more permanent.
Yeah, sure. So that's why they're looking more at the Williams structure than the. I didn't understand that. The Glenbrook.
That's one of the issues.
Yeah.
That's right. And Williams is older, as you mentioned,
right?
And in
a smaller
more need
campus.
Of repair. But if you build a new central structure, where do you put it? Also,
at the DPW. No.
busing is an expensive district cost.
Sure.
So if you build one structure, your busing commitments are going to get much larger. Those busing costs go much longer. They're going to go as long as the building exists. This is not a one-time thing where we plunk down a lot of money and we're set. And so
Sounds like a lot of decisions need to be made.
I think a lot of research needs to be done, and I think a lot of prudent, open discussion needs to be had. And that's what's nice about committees in general, whether it's the school committee or any other. Different minds will see the same problem from different perspectives and offer different considerations to the discussion. So it's not a decision that I think the school committee should rush into. It's not a decision I think the town should rush into. And it's my hope that if I win or not, that the school committee will very deliberately go through that decision-making process and come to the best decision for everyone.
As you're saying this, it's obviously occurring to me there. What's the total number of people on the school committee? 7?
I'd have to go down the list, but
7.
yeah, I believe it's 7.
7. Yeah. It's got to be an odd number. So I think it's 7.
That's right.
And there'll be 3 new people out of the 7 coming on board after this election.
And
this is what makes it a very important election.
And 3 others who are fairly freshly minted as well in their first term.
Oh, okay.
That's
I
right.
didn't even think about that, but that's sure. So and you're at this apex of this big decision, and the town is, of course, saying, well, wow, what are we going to do here? Because I know the other big decision has been, I'm going to bring this up, is a DPW yard, and there's this. Some people say, oh my gosh, we can't do a school, a DPW yard, and a senior center, and we're sort of saying let's be deliberative about each one, and so the residents are asking, the town's being asked to support the DPW facility at this point. What's your position on that, and do you think it affects the schools?
Only indirectly when it comes to the budget and the finances. I'm not going to comment too much on the DPW because my mind is focused on the school committee. I trust the DPW when they say they need a facility. Whenever you're down on Emerson, you can kind of tell they need a new facility. Right. So there's no argument there. I'm not going to sit here and say, no, that's all bogus.
Well, the interesting thing is, do you know what they do for you?
The DPW?
For the schools.
Oh, sure. They plow the lots. I believe they're involved in hauling the dumpsters. Well,
they're in charge of trash.
Yeah,
right. They're in charge of all of your
fields. Absolutely.
And the facility maintenance. They have a lot to do with the facility maintenance. So just to say, if they're dysfunctional, I would guess that affects the schools.
I'd be the first to say the town is a clock. And everything we're discussing is a gear within that clock. We can't pluck out a gear, or we can't leave a gear unaddressed and broken, because then the clock won't run. So I agree completely. But I'll always kind of fall back on this message that education is our brand. So if we can address other town concerns and leave our children getting the best education they can get here, let's do that. But as soon as our education delivery begins to be its own victim, I think that needs to be the priority for the town.
And you think we're at that point?
No. I don't think we're at that point.
Okay.
But just as deferred maintenance becomes a bigger and bigger problem as time goes by, so does deferred anything. And so I think we need to keep our eye on what's coming down the pike. I was part of the redistricting effort the last time the districts...
that was a big deal.
I was, yeah. I was a parent representative for Blueberry, and that was I had only lived in the town, I believe, 3 years at that time, and I could see years before that redistricting was going to be needed. And so that's another example of an issue, and that occurred under the watch of a different school committee and a different superintendent, so no fingers being pointed here. But that is an example of an issue that got much bigger than it needed to be because it was deferred for too long.
Right.
So I think discussions need to be had. They don't cost anything. I think opinions need to be sought. Those don't cost anything either. And the more you put things on people's radar and you give them the reasons as to why these are issues, the more they can work with you to address those than fight against you for some other cause.
So realistically, you're correct. A lot of deliberation and careful thought needs to be had regarding the middle schools without sacrificing anything at the high school or the elementary schools, which we're still paying off the renovations in the elementary schools, not to mention the high school. Bonding. That's not going to happen overnight.
Right.
It's going to take years for you to come up with a plan. And then it's going to take probably years for the town to decide if they like your plan.
Most likely.
That's what happens.
Right.
So it's not going to, like it's going to be butting up against these other projects
Or further down the pike. I agree, yeah. And again, I have a daughter who is about to leave 3rd grade and go into 4th. And I have no expectation that she's going to see any other middle school than Williams.
Yeah.
So I think it is the long view. But that's not a reason to not have the conversations now.
Oh, I'm not saying not to have, I think you're absolutely right. You have to start having the conversations now. But I'm just saying in terms of people panicking about the relationship of the projects when they are already spread out naturally, the relationship might not be as acute because of the spread out. The spread out might be a good thing, both for decision making and for financing.
That's right.
Clearly for financing, because it spreads out the costs.
That's right, that's right.
So the burden of any one of those projects is spread out.
And by no means, as much as I don't think my younger daughter will ever see a different middle school, I don't have any illusions that we'll be done paying off all of our other commitments by the time we need a new middle school.
Oh, no, never.
So
no,
these
the high school is on a 20-year loan,
exactly.
I'm pretty sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you can almost think of the town as analogous to a large family, right? And one of the things that causes the most strife, or maybe I'm just speaking of my own family, but one of the things that causes strife in families typically is, why didn't you tell me sooner? If I'd known this was an issue, I could have done something. I could have offered some solution. Why did you wait to tell me this until now? And that's often a gripe when there's big.
Well, everybody, I don't think there's been any secret.
No.
About these 3 issues, these 3 big projects. But the other thing that it's impressive to me about the town is that at the same time we're concerned about expenses and our costs, we're doing creative things to increase some revenue. I mean, the big buildings, the big office building that may be built off of Dwight, well, that isn't just going to be built. That's going to create revenue for the community. That's a benefit to the community. Whatever's happening at the Christian Science facility and or the old synagogue at the corner of Williams and Dwight, that's going to be commercial probably.
The expansion of the Bliss shops?
Is just now happening, right, is going to benefit. So all of that is, to me, the challenge of all the elected boards, it's not my philosophy and I'm not running for anything, is the balance of the community. You mentioned, because in your mind the education is our trademark. Well, in my mind, there's an ambience to Longmeadow that makes it a trademark. And there's also a really good reputation of public safety in Longmeadow. And there's also a really good reputation of services. You mentioned sidewalks and streets. Well, that's Department of Public Works stuff. That is our trademark. And you talk about the clock. I mean, it's all of that. And when you're a parent of young kids, you want to say, well, it's education. But yeah, and that in 12 years from now, you're going to say, well, maybe it's the parks I really like. Now we don't get rid of the parks, maybe, or the whole thing. And so the ability, what I question is every candidate's ability to see beyond the school committee in terms of the town. So talk to me about that.
Sure, sure. And that's the slippery slope, I think. That's not slippery slope, but that's the balance. That's what becomes the challenge of a position like this. When you're elected to the school committee, ostensibly you're put there because families want you to represent the schools. And I'll go back to something I mentioned earlier, in that I believe school committee members are there to advocate for the district, to fight for the district, to do so responsibly and with the best interest of the town in mind, but the first priority has to be the schools. We have a select board that advocates for the town as an entire entity. So I do believe, and I would on the school committee, argue for what I thought was best for the education of the children.
Even if it costs you a fire truck or...
Well, that becomes the hard decision, right? So why is that fire truck necessary? Is a child going to perhaps gain, or is a class going to perhaps gain a single percentage point on the 5th grade MCAS for that fire truck? If that's the projection, then maybe not. But if special needs children are going to receive a resource that they need in order to upgrade what they're getting, then maybe so. So it's never as simple as we'll lose a fire truck and give that money to the schools. It's we're going to lose that fire truck and give the money to the schools for what? How are we going to assess those improvements and make sure that they were worth it? And then can we achieve those improvements in other cheaper ways that don't cost the fire truck? So I'm not dodging the question, but it really is case by case, I think.
Okay. We're given the 5-minute mark, so anything that I didn't ask you that you want to talk about?
No, I think you did a pretty thorough job.
I did all right. No.
I want to reiterate what you had said earlier.
That's good.
I've had an opportunity to meet the other candidates, the other 3 candidates.
And everybody watching this will have an opportunity as well.
And I've got 2 votes that I can spare for the election, because we all get to vote for 3. And I'm having a hard time deciding who to vote for. So whether I get a seat or not, I do think it's important for the viewers to realize that I think they're going to do really well for themselves this time. We've got 4 committed individuals who I think are running for the right reasons. And so I think the school committee is going to be well off for that.
Well, that's very well put. And I think that's really the important thing, because the town, as you mentioned early on, the school committee, I may not get this right, it's at least 56% of the budget if you don't include benefits. And if you include benefits, it's something like 73 or 76%
we get a large slice of the pie.
Of the budget goes to education. So there's no question this town is committed. As is, I think that percentage cut is not different, that different among all the communities in Massachusetts. It just happens to be the reality. And so it's an important, June 13th is an important vote for the school committee. It's also very important for the town, for the DPW question, yes or no, wherever you are on that. That's a really important decision, because both of those are important parts of the town.
And what I like, and you had mentioned that there's sometimes a little bit of conflict and tension between different entities such as the school committee and the town board, but what I always appreciate about this town in general, as a candidate or a resident, is that everyone is doing the best job they can for their commitments. I think the school committee has done historically a good job in what school committees can do, and I think the select board has done an equally good job for what their priorities are. When priorities conflict, sometimes boards and entities conflict, but everyone's doing what they think is best for the town, and that's to be commended.
I think the point you brought up about the communication is important, and I know recently chairmen of the different committees, the chairman of the school committee, the chairman of the finance, chairman of the select board have been meeting offline without their, just to sort of get a feel for what the priorities are and how people can time things, how they can work their budgets so that we don't have a huge fight, a bloodbath, which we've had at town meetings. And I'm not sure anybody wins in that circumstance, because it's like everybody gets their chance, everybody gets. There's a limited amount of resources, financial resources, and there is Proposition 2.5, so we need to be cognizant of all of that. I think the town's doing great. It's been very refreshing seeing a superintendent, town manager, and select board that are talking to the superintendent and the finance committee. I mean, we're very fortunate that we have some leaders in those positions that take the time to try to listen to each other and learn what the needs are. So I challenge you, if you are elected, to do as you said here. Sometimes people forget what they say before they get elected.
Not me.
And good luck. Good luck to you.
Thank you.
I liked a lot of your ideas, and I'm really glad I got to hear them directly from you. So for our audience, just a reminder again, Tom is one of 4 candidates running for 3 positions on the school committee. You have an opportunity to make a difference in the town by voting on June 13th for 3 of the 4 candidates, and voting for, hopefully for the new DPW yard, and for a selectman who's running unopposed, and for a person for the planning board who is running unopposed. We hope to see you at the polls. Tom, thank you very much and good luck.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
And we're going to say good night. I don't see them watching me, but say good night to the audience. Good night.